Good morning, all. Good morning. Ann mentioned that I retired. Actually, I resigned, and I've been trying to retire, uh, and I haven't had a single day to myself since I left on March 31. But I wanted to make sure that I was here to do this because for the last 5 years, every time I mentioned clean fuels and Louisiana's position, I've always said we need to have the opportunity to be able to pull into a love or a racetrack and be able to choose what you need to move forward, whether it be propane, compressed natural gas, whether it be charging up, whether it be gasoline, whether it be hydrogen fuel cells. And so when I saw the title of this presentation, I was like, okay, did she do this just for me? Kind of. And we do have the right people here with us. Back in 2018, LDEQ, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural Resources, and the Governor's Office, we petitioned the Federal Highway Administration for alternative fuel corridor status. So in 2018, each one of our interstate systems now are actually alternative fuel corridors. I-20 east and west, I-49 north and south, I-10 east and west, and I-12 east and west. That means that you see those blue signs and you'll be able to pick the fuel source that you need. We are just about now to add EV to that, to those blue stickers. As a matter of fact, we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but through the Inflation Reduction Act, DEQ and DOTD, who actually got the funding, we're going to receive about 74 million over the next 4 years for fast chargers. I'll also talk to our panel a little bit about how they plan to address the Justice 40 piece of federal money if any of that comes forward. But ultimately, we're going to try to be on the front end of the curve and not the back end of the curve as we move forward. Also in 2017, we got 20 million from the Volkswagen settlement. We all know that Volkswagen underestimated their emissions, bless you, underestimated their emissions, and they actually was awarded, I think it was 4.3 billion. Louisiana's share, based on the amount of diesel cars or engines that we had in our state at the time, our pro rata share was roughly 20 million. Compared that to California at the time, they got 400 million. So it's just unfortunate for us. But we use that money to actually put in 92 charging stations. We actually gave 7 or 8 school systems 400 buses, alternative fuel buses, and we helped our transportation partners in Shreveport build a fast charger where they back in that razor, charges up while they change people in and out, and then they move on. So as a matter of fact, if you don't know, the electric fleet in Shreveport is one of the largest in the South. So that's right here in Louisiana. So having said all that, I've been on the front line. I will continue to champion alternative fuels. I think that we're going to have to use them all. Sometimes when I do talk, if I don't mention propane, I'll get a note from the propane folks go, hey, don't forget about propane. And I don't. I try to make sure that there are all types of sources out there, again, from compressed natural gas to hydrogen. And as I guess the next panel might even talk about the hydrogen hub that we will move forward with. Okay, so as a part of our panel today, we've got Rushi Patel, the manager of Diversified Energy RaceTrac. Rushi is a manager of Diversified Energy at Metroplex Energy, the wholesale fuel subsidiary of RaceTrac. The energy team he manages develops all strategic plans for diversified energy and alternative fuels for RaceTrac, including electric vehicle chargers, as well as research and development into the future alternatives. Let me tell you this quick story. So there was a newscast that this particular newscaster decided he was going to take a 120-mile trip from LA to San Diego with an electric vehicle. Of course, California is well ahead of all of us with the infrastructure. I'm sure all the panels you've heard this previously have talked about that being a barrier, infrastructure. Well, he made this 120-mile trip with no problems. He got there with 30% of his battery left. The same reporter flew to Houston, Texas, took the same electric vehicle, and drove from Houston to Austin, major highway, Had he not found a level 1 charger somewhere on a farm, he wouldn't have made his trip from Houston to Austin. Just telling you how far behind we are with infrastructure. He had to actually have to find a farm that happened to have a charger that gave him what he needed to finally get to Austin. So that's where we are. So I will bring Rushi up, and he can kind of tell us what RaceTrac has planned for us. Rushi.
Hey y'all. Before I start my presentation, I'm going to add a little bit to that story. I did a very similar trip in a hydrogen car from LA to San Diego. There's only like 1, maybe 2 hydrogen refueling stations in San Diego. And I will say they had all worked really, really well. And so I know the EV world's still kind of coming along and finding out enough charging, and you're just really hoping that it works. We here at RaceTrac, and I'm sure Loves as well, are looking to improve on that, and really guests mean a lot to us, and our professional drivers mean a lot to us. And we're really thinking, what do truck stops today look like? And there's often few food options, limited or crowded over parking depending on the area or metropolitan area you're at. And sometimes, depending on the area, just a lack of clean and safe options for truck drivers. In some areas, there's not enough truck stops to kind of support the professional drivers we have. My slides are really short here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. But when we think of kind of truck stops of the future, not even thinking about alternative fuels, I'll get to that in just a moment, but just what kind of technology can we add to help make that guest experience really frictionless? And how do we improve on the great work that Loves and Pilots have already done? Our travel center program is really, really small. RaceTrac, for those of you that aren't familiar, we're based in Atlanta. We're in the Southeast, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, and really Dallas is our kind of main footprint. But we're starting to expand upon that and really try improving the truck stops. Some of the technologies that we're looking at are really how do we increase food sales through pizza bars and our great Nathan's hot dogs? How do we get customer interactions through apps? 360 Pump, I believe, was outside. Their 360 Fuel with their large screens. Screens aren't really a thing at fuel pumps, and today you may get like an advertising screen. And when we look at the EV world, 30, 40-inch screens are starting to become the norm. How do we start adding that same advertising and guest experience to both our electrified guests as well as our traditional liquid fuel guests, and making sure they have that great feedback? Real-time feedback and getting our issues, our fuel pumps kind of up and online quicker and faster is really important to us as well. The next few slides I have for y'all are just a few photos of kind of RaceTracs, our nice, great big price signs, and just our canopies. And we've designed our canopies to where we have kind of our light duty vehicles out in the front forecourt, and then high flow diesel in the back. And so that way there's a front entrance for any light or medium duty vehicles, and the heavy duty vehicles that need that high flow diesel exhaust fluid as well can come directly to that back court. Well designed to have maneuverability, and there's also a back door there as well. So that way you have the truck stop features and truck stop stuff kind of on one side of the store, and then pizzas, hot dogs, sodas, Red Bulls, and whatnot on the other side. And food is really important for us here at RaceTrac. We saw a need that getting fresh, hot, good food on the road can sometimes be difficult. And so for us, as you can see here, some of our pizza bars and whatnot, and just really grab and go, supporting that convenient, quick refueling time. When we talk about quick refueling times, we get to a lot of alternative fuels, and some that have similar refueling times and some that have different. We like to take a sawed-off shotgun approach when it comes to alternative fuels. We like to say we're fuel agnostic. If you want to put sweet tea in your car, we'll put sweet tea in our tanks. We'll deliver that to you. You may not go anywhere, but that's the kind of approach we like to take. And as we saw from Peterbilt, that messy middle approach of there's natural gas, renewable natural gas, and all these other different types of fuels. We're not sure what exactly it's going to happen in the future, but we want to support our guests and our professional drivers throughout that whole transition. And so a few things we're really keeping our eyes on is electricity and a megawatt charging standard. That is a lot of electricity, and I'm curious as to how Scott and the other utilities are going to be dealing with a whole megawatt. For information, a racetrack, a typical suburban racetrack that you may see near Baton Rouge, our demand's like 100 kW in the summer, and so a megawatt's 10 racetracks all at the same time in August, all on air conditioners, everything else going on. That's what we're looking to deliver to heavy-duty trucks. Beyond that, we do see some opportunities for renewable diesel, especially fleets and others that are interested in converting but already have existing diesel trucks but want that ESG and zero emissions piece. Natural gas and renewable natural gas are really important as well. That technology has been around for a while and it's starting to gain steam. And then hydrogen is something that everyone's talking about and everyone's looking and frankly, Rushi's Googling a lot of and really just trying to figure it out. So with that, that's really all I got. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks.
All right, so that was quite interesting that he mentioned food and beverage for customers, which it didn't kind of cross my mind. I guess you always want to be able to have that option. They will need something to do while they're fueling up. And then he mentioned comfort for the drivers, which is something I hadn't thought about. How do you give them a better experience as they move forward? I will introduce our next guest and then I'll have a few questions for everybody. So Kim Okafor is the General Manager for Zero Emission Solutions for Trillium and Love's Truck Travel Stop. This includes the development and management of the EV charging, hydrogen fueling, and solar businesses. She's been with Trillium since Love's Travel Stop acquired the company in 2016. Kim also actively serves on the board of directors for the California Hydrogen Business Council. Kim has a degree in electrical engineering from the University of Houston. Kim's goal as the general manager of Zero Emission Solutions is to develop sustainable business opportunities that provide economic advantages for their customers. Help me in welcoming Kim Okafor.
Good morning or good afternoon. Oh, good morning. My name is Kim Okafor. I manage Zero Emission Solutions for the Love's family of companies. I have been with Love's for 7 years, and I've been serving in the capacity of leading the electric vehicle business, the hydrogen fueling business, and the solar businesses for about 5 years now for the organization. And I wanted to start a little bit by talking about who we are and what we do. So we always say that we're more than a travel stop, we're more than a truck stop. We like to go as far up the value chain as makes economic sense, which means that we have a number of different companies under the Love's umbrella. It starts with the mothership, Love's Truck Stops. So we have about 620 locations across the country. We build somewhere between 20 and 40 new locations every year, which comes to about we're building a new truck stop about every other week. But we have a number of different businesses under the Love's umbrella. It includes our factoring business, Gemini, which we have over 800 trucks and about 1,300 to 1,400 truck drivers that deliver our fuel and the different things to our truck stops across the country. We have Truck Care. We acquired Speedco, where we do light mechanical work for the trucks that come to our truck stops and travel centers. We also have Musket. Musket is the logistics fueling arm of our business. They do fuel trading and things like that. And then we have Trillium. Trillium is really the part of the business that I wanted to talk about today. So Trillium's, we end up being the alternative fueling member of the Love family of companies. We provide all of the alternative fuels that Love's has under their umbrella. So it includes CNG and RNG, like Rushi brought up, but it also includes renewable diesel, biodiesel, EV charging, and hydrogen fueling, both for light duty and heavy duty trucks. I wanted to talk about some of our experience in the zero emission space to date. I'm going to kind of follow in Rushi's lead and not taking too much time with presentation because I'm really interested in the discussion that you guys are looking to have. But we've designed, built, and we currently operate and maintain hydrogen fueling stations. We've done that in the transit space. And in my opinion, transit is really who's leading the hydrogen transportation market. That's a vehicle that's readily available, commercially available. There are a number of transits across the country that have hydrogen fuel cell buses. We have done 2 different types of hydrogen fueling stations. The first is liquid hydrogen fuel. We worked with Air Products on one of them at OCT in Orange County Transportation Authority. We're working on a second one with Plug Power out in San Diego, California. But we've also worked on or designed and built and currently operate and maintain hydrogen fueling where it has on-site hydrogen production, so utilizing electrolyzers. We have a Nell electrolyzer at that fueling station. So our goal here is to learn about the hydrogen transportation market with transits, so that when it's time to deploy that infrastructure at our truck stop, it makes it a little bit easier. We have some of that learning, and we're able to move a little faster. The other side of the coin is EV charging. And from my perspective, the market that's really leading on that side is the passenger vehicle market. And think something that will really help to push this market forward is the NEVI funds that are available in the IIJA that a lot of us have been talking about today. We have EV chargers in our network now. We have about 80 chargers in our network, and we're looking at growing that into we have 600 locations, so hundreds of chargers at those locations is the plans that we're making now. In our experience with EV charging passenger vehicles, they sit there for 20 to 40 minutes, which is much longer than our gasoline customers sit. So how do we make that experience enjoyable for them? The experience that they deserve and that they look forward to. The worst thing that can happen is you drive that car from LA to San Diego and you get to a charger and it doesn't work. Or you get to a charger and there's nothing else for you to do. So one, uptime is going to be a real factor when it comes to this market. And quite honestly, it's a factor that's struggling right now. And that's why I think that having truck stops and travel centers, people that are used to the fueling experience, entering this market it's going to be what helps uptime. Because, I mean, that's what we do today. If a gasoline dispenser isn't working, we're not making money. So we're incentivized to make sure that dispenser works so that we continue to make money. I mean, and it's going to be the same thing that happens in the EV charging space. The other thing that's going to be really important for customers, because they're sitting there for 20 to 40 minutes, is amenities. Wi-Fi, fresh food. The worst thing that you can do is you get there, you have your baby, and there's nowhere for you to change your baby. So diaper changing stations. Things that you don't really think that you need until you get there. Dog parks. We have dog parks at a number of our different locations. So it's really providing an experience that's a little different from what the gasoline customer needs, but we have to think about it differently so that we can provide an experience for an EV charging customer that they deserve. One of my last slides is the things that we're thinking about, and a lot of us have talked about it today, but it's, there are a lot of questions in the zero emission market. When you think about heavy-duty electric trucks, we brought it up today. I think it was Patrick from Peterbilt that said, our customers can reduce their load so that you can carry the battery. That would help. It is helpful, but if you're hauling fuel, every gallon of fuel in your load, that's money that you're losing, right? So how are we going to get over that hump so that we can utilize battery electric trucks in a way that we're utilizing our assets today? The way that fleets think about their assets are different than the way that passengers, normal people, think about their assets. Those are depreciated assets that actually make them money. So if, how do we take the zero emission trucks and make it look like what fleets are used to their trucks looking like and being like? So battery technology advancement is really what's going to be needed here. And then power availability, talking about that earlier with Entergy and how do you, and Rushi brought it up even as well, if you have a truck stop that has 10 megawatt chargers, and if every truck stop in Louisiana had 10 megawatt chargers, the grid is not ready for that. How do we get to a point that we're ready for that? So it's still a question that has to be answered. Another question, if we're all honest with ourselves, is opportunity cost. If we put a charger in a diesel lane, and a battery electric truck pulls into that diesel lane, it takes them longer to charge. You could have had 2 or 3 diesel trucks come during that time, so you're making less money. What are the opportunity costs related to transitioning this, especially when you have multiple fuels at the same truck stop? So measuring out the opportunity costs as it relates to a parking spot, inside sales, that increases with EV drivers if they're coming out of their cars and they're spending the money inside the truck stop. And then the other thing is autonomous trucks, which we're not talking about right now, but what does that look like? If there's no one inside the truck, inside sales is going to drop. So what do we do with the truck stop that we built, that asset that we invested in? So these are the things that we're thinking about, and quite honestly, a lot of things are going to change. I do want to say, putting these questions out there isn't to kill the business. I think these are questions that we have to continuously ask ourselves and monitor the market and make sure that the market is moving in the direction to make the market actually work. The long and the short of it is a lot of things will change, but a lot will stay the same. And one of the main things that will stay the same, in my opinion, you could ask the DOT and they may disagree with me, but I think the American corridor system is going to stay mostly the same over the next several decades, which means that truck stop operators are going to continue to be needed. We just have to make sure that we're transitioning with our customers. And if customers want to fill their trucks on sweet tea, we'll have a sweet tea dispenser. In any case, thank you, and look forward to your questions.
That was all very good. Great information, actually. So I do have a couple of quick questions that I'll start with. Both of you talked about infrastructure. You talked about the facade, or what RaceTrac looks like. You talked about one being built almost one a week in this country. So short term, what can I expect to see in January 2024 from RaceTrac and or Loves when it comes to alternative fuels and just infrastructure? What can I plan to see differently? I'll start with you, Rushi.
Yeah. So what I'll say today is RaceTrac, we don't have any EV chargers in the ground today. By January 2024, we're looking at between 5 and 6 different EV chargers in our states. And really, we've taken a lot of time and done a lot of learning and kind of copied some ideas from our competitors to really figure out, like, what's this market look like? Where's the right place to put the chargers? Finding data on, like, how many folks are going to show up is really hard. You might as well just kind of take a bullseye and see what numbers you get. And so what I'd say from an alternative fuels perspective, you're going to see a few EV chargers. We're starting to experiment with kind of higher ethanol blends, pushing a little bit more E85. Biodiesel is still important to us as well. We don't do any natural gas refilling today. We're still exploring that. And for us, in the part of the state that we occupy, the Southeast, hydrogen's still a little bit of ways, but we're keeping an eye on that and just moving as the market goes.
And what about Loves?
Yeah, with the Loves, we do have plans to continue to build out our CNG network. So we are putting in more publicly accessible CNG fueling stations across the country, especially in places like California. The other thing is building out our EV charging network. We have plans in places specifically like Louisiana to go after NEVI funds and to use that to help us build out the network. And to work, you brought up Justice 40 earlier, to work with local companies, local businesses, local people to build that out. So that's really important to us, and it'll help tremendously because the EV charging business the economics related to that business are difficult. So those are two things that you can see. There's one more thing that you can't see that are being incorporated into newer truck stops, and that's future proofing. We are putting in conduits and pipes and tubing and things like that underground at our truck stops today for future light duty EV, future heavy duty EV, future hydrogen fueling stations, and future CNG fueling stations. So that's what you'll see, and the things you won't see are the tubes and the conduits under the ground so that we can very quickly put in more alternative fueling stations.
Well, that's certainly one of the things I wanted to get you to say, is that there are some things being done now that are not visible to your eye, but ultimately you'll start to see the charging stations pop up. You'll start to see the compressed natural gas aisles crop up because you're already doing that preliminary work. All right, so Department of Energy, EPA, there's lots of federal money. And as I mentioned earlier, the state of Louisiana is actually going to get $74 million for charging stations. So one of my conversations with my counterpart at DOTD was, you have to realize that we're going to have to, there are requirements. Can't be more than 5 miles from an interstate. It got to be every 50 miles. You got to have security. You got to be open 24 hours a day. And you've got to satisfy Justice 40. So there will be charging stations that will be built in areas that will never be used. It's just the way it goes. And then we talked about all of these questions. Batteries, you can't have the iPhone battery and the Samsung battery. Batteries have to be interchangeable. And you got to understand that most folks have never even bought a brand new car, so they're certainly not going to buy a brand new electric vehicle as their first one. All of these questions had to be answered. Last thing, when we did distribute the Volkswagen money, we bought 60 new heavy-duty vehicles for DOTD, but they were all high-efficiency diesel. Because at that time, 4 years ago, and from what I just heard at the previous panel, the workload just was not, you just could not do it with an EV. Now I'm hearing that is changing, so that whole next generation will be moving forward. So my question is, have you or your companies gone after any of the federal money, either through state agencies or on your own? And if so, what have you done? I'll start with you, Kim.
Yeah, we have gone after a lot of the federal dollars, or federal and state dollars. We've gone after some in the past. What I will say is that with the plans of building out the networks that I was just talking about, we have developed a grants team in-house that is focused on looking for these grant funds and going after them in places like Louisiana. And then working with consultants like Joe's company, G&A, and working with experts that are familiar with going after these grant funds. So really utilizing that to help close the gap of what you were just saying. I mean, we're going to put in these EV charging stations, and for a while, they will probably not get used to the amount that our gasoline dispensers are used, but it's needed, because without that, folks like us won't buy an electric car. So definitely those funds are extremely helpful.
Rushi.
What I'll say from the RaceTrac perspective is we're actively looking at NEVI, CFI. There's a lot of funding opportunities that really help pencil in that business case. I wish it was a piece of cake. It is not. And so RaceTrac traditionally, we're a private family-held company. We haven't really taken many dollars from Uncle Sam, so we're still figuring it out, right? Reading federal registers is now my day job part of it. And so it's been interesting. So we're working with teams of consultants, internal and external, to help us figure out what does it all mean? How do we do the most with the money that we can win in states like Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, and Texas? So that's a lot of the work that we're doing. But I am excited for the NEVI funding and really getting 4 chargers, 4 ports, 150 kW apiece every 50 miles. I think it's going to do a lot for our rural communities. And I drive a Bolt EV. It's the cheapest EV on the market. There's a tax credit. If you need a commuter car, go get a Bolt. It is the answer. No plug for Chevy. But all that to say, I think as we look at EVs and them going from large kind of middle income and high income families down to middle income and lower income, solutions like the Bolt, as well as having that reliability of charging, is going to be really important with the 97% uptime and just finding chargers where you are. Beyond that, I think we don't have any chargers today, so we don't have any of that data to say how many folks are showing up. But every time I go to a charger over the last year, 2 years, there's one more person there. There's another person there. There's people that I would think are never there. I was at an Electrify America station off of I-20 between Birmingham and Atlanta. And there's a Chevy Bolt owner who can only charge at 50 kW. And for those of you that are familiar, that is really, really slow. The guy was going to be there for an hour. Poor guy was just sitting in his car at a Walmart. And we had mentioned, hey, what if we put a charger at the RaceTrac a mile up the road? And he's like, I think I'd like that. And I think hearing that kind of feedback helps bolster kind of more folks that haven't leaned into it initially like we have, and it gets us excited for it.
All right, so last question, and I will say that there's only one fully electric vehicle in a state fleet in Louisiana, and it's a Chevy Bolt that I put in DEQ's fleet in 2019. We actually went and test drove it, and they delivered and wrapped it, and it's fully electric. Last thing, and then I'll turn it over to the audience. So we know that EPA has got, recently they distributed these climate pollution prevention grants. There's going to be roughly $5 billion that will be used to implement those grants. The folks who don't have climate action plans, or whatever they call them, They just simply have to raise their hand and they say, we're going to develop something. They get $3 million to do that. Louisiana has already developed a climate action plan, but we can get that $3 million, and I'm sure the governor will talk about that later today, to update our plan. Updating that plan could include charging stations, infrastructure. So I want to put that on your mind, if you haven't thought about it, that you may want to look at the climate pollution prevention grants and see how through either DNR or the governor's office, how they can help you with infrastructure or with charging stations or whatever you may need to do. So that was more of a comment than a question.